How's it look, Tapas? Am I good to go? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa, Parudika Charja Ashtotar the Shishimat, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa, Parudika Charja Ashtotar the Shishimat, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 19th day of April, 2021 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 10, The Opulence of the Absolute. Texts 12 to 13 on page 435. And if you'll forgive me. Set this up? Just reset it up?
I did.
Can you just check the bottom here? There's a little switch here so it goes down to the bottom. See that? Yeah, it's much better that way otherwise.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it has that defect. It's only $20. I have an extra. This is like the third one we've been through. I have an extra one hanging in my closet, but they're kind of rickety. Okay. So, I listen to a verse. I listen to a lecture of Srila Prabhupada's every morning, and some of them he does this word by word thing. So I'm going to show you how he does it. He does line by line. So we go through one word by word and then do the line. Word by word, do the line. Then we'll go through the whole verse. Okay? Arjuna Vacha Param Brahma Param Dhama Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan Pavitram Paramam Bhavan Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adidevam Ajam Vibhum. Arjuna Vacha Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adidevam Ajam Vibhum. All right, we'll do the next one too. Ahustvam Mishayak Sarve Devarshir Naradastata Asato Devalo Vyasa Swayam Chaiva Bravishime. Arjuna Vacha Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adidevam Ajam Vibhum. Ahustvam Shayak Sarve Devashir Naradastata Asito Devalo Vyasa Swayam Chaiva Bravishime. All right, go ahead and do the first verse. Arjuna Vacha Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavatram Paramam Bhavan Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adidevam Ajam Vibhum. Second. Ahustvam Shayak Sarve Devashir Naradastata Asito Devalo Vyasa Swayam Chaiva Bravishime. All right, I'll just do the synonyms. Arjuna Vacha, Arjuna said, Param Supreme, Brahma Truth, Param Supreme, Dhamma Sustenance, Pavitram Pure, Paramam Supreme, Bhavan You, Purusham Personality, Shashvatam Eternal, Divyam Transcendental, Adi Devam the Original Lord, Ajam Unborn, Vibhum Greatest, Ahu Say, Tvam of You, Rishiya the sages, Sarve all, Deva Rishihi the sage among the demigods, Narada, Tata also Asitaha, Asita, Devalaha, Devala, Vyasaha, Vyasa, Swayam personally, Cha also, Eva certainly, Bravishi you are explaining, may unto me. Translation. Arjuna said, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages such as Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyas confirm this truth about you. And now you yourself are declaring it to me. Purport. In these two verses, the Supreme Lord gives a chance to the Mayavadi philosopher, for here it is clear that the Supreme is different from the individual soul. Arjuna, after hearing the essential 4 verses of the Bhagavad Gita in this chapter, became completely free from all doubts and accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He, Arjuna, at once boldly declares, you are Param Brahma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And previously, Krishna stated that he is the originator of everything and everyone. Every demigod and every human being is dependent upon him. Men and demigods, out of ignorance, think that they are absolute and independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their ignorance is removed perfectly by the discharge of devotional service. This has already been explained in the previous verse by the Lord. Now, by His grace, Arjuna is accepting him as the supreme truth in accordance with the Vedic injunction. It is not that because Krishna is Arjuna's intimate friend, Arjuna is flattering him by calling him the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth. Whatever Arjuna says in these 2 verses is confirmed by Vedic truth. Vedic injunctions affirm that only one who takes to devotional service to the Supreme Lord can understand him, whereas others cannot. Each and every word of this verse spoken by Arjuna is confirmed by Vedic injunction. In the Kena Upanishad, it is stated that the Supreme Brahman is the rest for everything. And Krishna has already explained that everything is resting on him. The Mundaka Upanishad confirms that the Supreme Lord, in whom everything is resting, can be realized only by those who engage constantly in thinking of him. This constant thinking of Krishna is smaranam, one of the methods of devotional service. It is only by devotional service to Krishna that one can understand his position and get rid of this material body. In the Vedas, the Supreme Lord is accepted as the purest of the pure. One who understands that Krishna is the purest of the pure can become purified from all sinful activities. One cannot be disinfected from sinful activities unless he surrenders unto the Supreme Lord. Arjuna's acceptance of Krishna as the Supreme Pure complies with the injunctions of Vedic literature. This is also confirmed by great personalities of whom Narada is the chief. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one should always meditate upon him and enjoy one's transcendental relationship with him. He is the Supreme Existence. He is free from bodily needs, birth and death. Not only does Arjuna confirm this, but all the Vedic literatures, the Puranas and histories, in all Vedic literatures, Krishna is thus described, and the Supreme Lord himself also says in the 4th chapter, "Although I am unborn, I appear on this earth to establish religious principles." He is the supreme origin. He has no cause, for he is the cause of all causes, and everything is emanating from him. This perfect knowledge can be had by the grace of the Supreme Lord. Here Arjuna expresses himself through the grace of Krishna. If we want to understand the Bhagavad Gita, we should accept the statements in these 2 verses. This is called the parampara system, acceptance of the disciplic succession. Unless one is in the disciplic succession, he cannot understand the Bhagavad Gita. It is not possible by so-called academic education. Unfortunately, those proud of their academic education, despite so much evidence in the Vedic literatures, stick to their obstinate conviction that Krishna is an ordinary person. Om jnana timarandasya jnanandana shalakya chakshu unmidatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So this is the culmination, if you will, of the essential 4 verses, which we heard from 10:8 to 11. And there Krishna declares that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matak sarvam bhavatade. From me everything comes. I am the source of everything. And what's the natural conclusion? One who is Buddha, aham sarvasya matak sarvam bhavat iti madva bhajante mam Buddha bhava samanvita. That one is truly intelligent accepts this statement of Krishna, which is backed up by all of the Vedas and the Puranas and all the different Vedic literatures and the long line of realized acharyas, disciplic succession, and serves Krishna with all his heart. Iti madva bhajante imam Buddha bhava samanvita, in all respects. And then he described how, in a nice little verse, they think of me, because that's a broad subject, how to think of Krishna. That includes hearing about him, studying about him, chanting his name, all the different ways that are given to us to remember Krishna, think of Krishna. So, gata prana. Gata prana means their life is gone to me. In other words, they dedicate all their life energy, everything, their senses, mind, intelligence, to me. And then how do they enjoy life if everything is for Krishna? Bodhiyantak parasparam katayantastamam nityam tushyanti chadamanti cha. This is the proof, actually, that Krishna exists and that he's God. That you can sit there, we've all had experience of glorifying Krishna, being in ecstatic kirtan, which is the essence of hearing and chanting, and feeling some kind of transcendental pleasure, forgetting all about any kind of allurements from outside and being, at least for the time being, absorbed in serving Krishna and feeling pleasure. That's the abhideya, the practice. And Krishna responds, Tesham satati yuktanam bhajadam priti purvakam, those who are serving me in love and constantly, always satati yuktanam, He gives the intelligence. He's within our heart, so He's giving the intelligence by which we can come to Him. Buddhi yoga, by which we can connect to Him. And out of my compassion for them. And when you think about it, because we talk about mercy and compassion all the time, Krishna is full of compassion about it. There's a very close relationship between compassion and love. Think about it. You know, if you're in tune with somebody and you're feeling their suffering, empathy, and you try to do something about it, that's an expression of caring, of love. Right? It's very close. So that's the prema. That's the prayojana part coming out there. So Sambandha, Videya, Prayojana is all in those 4 verses. And Arjun, for his part, he's taking the role of the submissive all receiver of all of this knowledge, and so he now accepts Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I mean, he did before, but these verses are for us. And a very interesting thing happens, because then he says, I accept, this one line, Sarvam etam mritam manye, which we'll study in a minute. I accept Yanman Bodhisikesha, but whatever you say, I accept as true. Which itself is like, opens up the door to self-realization, to God realization. If we actually accept Krishna's words as true, then we'll come to the conclusion that Arjun comes to, and fully surrender and dedicate our life. So this is part of the wonderful aspect of Bhagavad Gita, and it's very concise. So he accepts it. So then he says, "Okay, let's start the war. I'm ready to fight." Right? But then he takes a little bit of a left turn, right? And then he begins to say, in text 16, please now describe to me how I can see you throughout of it. And Prabhupada makes the point in his purport, he's asking that for our benefit. Arjuna has already accepted Krishna as the Supreme Person, right? It's complete. But we need to be able to, in our benighted state, to see Krishna in this world. So we can take 2-block walk down there and see the ocean. Remember the verse that's coming up of bodies of water, I am the ocean. Oh, this is Krishna. And we can see so many other things that are the best of the best, and we can, this is a manifestation of Krishna's energy. So the Bhagavad Gita is spoken to Arjun, but not only for Arjun. It's spoken for all of us. And so Arjun will now serve as not a foil, but an agent by which Krishna can expand on many of the themes that he's already dealt with. Like in the chapter 13, the soul and the body, Chaita, Gya, he's already dealt with that to some degree. So it's the way the Bhagavad Gita kind of unfolds. So back to our verse, a very rich verse. Param Brahma, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Right? This is the very first aphorism of the Vedanta Sutra. We're meant in the human form of life to inquire into this Brahma. And Krishna has defined it. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. I am that from which everything comes. If those of you who are familiar with the Chaturshloki, it's said to be the Chaturshloki Bhagavatam. The whole Bhagavatam condensed into 4 verses in chapter 9 of the 2nd canto. The same thing. Ahame vasame bagre nanyajat sarasatparam. Krishna is saying the same thing, kind of in a little roundabout way. Before there was anything manifest, I existed. After this material manifestation occurs, it's only me, because it's all my energy. So I still only exist. And after I wind everything back, I continue to exist. So that's another definition, the same idea of the cause of all causes, sarva karana karanam. So those Chaturshloki Bhagavatam also deals with the same subject. So Param Brahma, Param Dhamma. Dhamma here means sustenance. You are the ultimate abode, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That means the Param Brahma, source of everything, ultimate abode. The purest, Pavitram Paramam Bhavan. This comes up in the Ishopanishad. Papa Vidham. Remember, Krishna, he's never sinful, he's pure, completely pure, and he can purify, like the sun. The sun is completely pure, no impurity, it burns everything up, and it can make anything impure, pure. So it's not just the fact that I'm pure, but by the influence of Krishna and his representatives, his pure devotees, he can purify places, he can purify hearts. Because of that channeling, Krishna is purifying energy. So Krishna is the purest of the pure. Pavitram Paramam Bhavan. The eternal divine person. So there's not a tinge of material affection in Krishna. The word affection, Prabhupada uses oftentimes in a little different way. Affection means, in the ordinary parlance, you like someone. It's not overwhelming love, but there's some. But affection also, look it up in the dictionary, can mean the quality of being affected by something. So Krishna has no affection. I mean, he's never affected by the material energy. He's the master of the material energy. So he's divine, always divine, eternal, and the original Deva, the original God, unborn, and Vibhum. Now this Vibhum is an echo of the whole idea of the chapter. Vibhuti Yoga. The glories, the opulences, the wondrous qualities. That's what Vibhuti is. And Krishna is known as Vibhu. Means he who possesses all these wondrous qualities. The source of everything wonderful. Now, that's the kind of a concise description of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he's giving the evidence, not, why this is true. It's not just my idea. And it's not that you just said it, but everyone said it. You say it, Ahustram, and so do the rishis. All the rishis. Deva Rishi. Who's the Deva Rishi? Narada. Narada is known the Rishi amongst the Devas. Narada Sada. And then he gives Asito Devala. Now this is also the Devala. They're always spoken of together. There's a certain thing they have together. I'm not sure exactly why, but they're also great sages. Vyasadeva. And you're saying it yourself. So this credibility, what is our efforts in devotional service based on? Faith. You pick up those beads and you start chanting. Why? You have faith that Krishna is not different from his name, that the chanting is the proper means. You have faith in the instructions Prabhupada gave, or the acharyas gave. This is good for me. And if you actually practice a little bit, you feel some effect. You feel yourself getting a little bit of taste, and you have a little bit of taste for Krishna and distaste for Maya. That's the essence of it, is that your attraction is being drawn away from Maya and toward Krishna. And there's a certain pleasure there that is unique. You haven't tasted before. And it's like a salve, great salve. So then your faith is rewarded. You've acted on the basis of the faith, and it becomes deeper because it's confirmed by your own experience. Remember the beginning of the previous chapter. We can all chant together, very important verse. Raja Vidya, Raja Guyam, Pavitram Idam Uttamam, Pratyakshavagavam Damyam Susukam Kartamaviyam. That this knowledge, Krishna consciousness, is the king of education and most confidential. No one knows about it. If you're just simply on the external platform, you're in the modes of nature, there's no entry, there's no way of understanding it. There has to be, as I like to use this word, intervention. I don't know if any of you have been in drug rehab. I wasn't, But I know many people I know of that phenomenon. AA. I told you about my experiences with AA up the street. These are people who's, some are very intelligent. They could be professors, they could be workers, doesn't matter. But you get sucked in to alcohol, and it takes over your life. Prabhupada often talks about the compulsion to smoke. That's another thing. Nicotine, And he's criticizing the so-called yoga teachers who are teaching here, and then they have to go outside and smoke a bidi. I smoked a few bidis in the 60s, right in Manhattan. They had a little thing because the East was the India was coming, Indian music, George Harrison, the beat. So there was a lot of interest in the East and LSD. Everyone was meditating. So they found a market. People want to try new cigarettes, So I tried a couple of bidis. I never bought a second pack of bidis, but I can imagine. Must be some tobacco in it because you get addicted to bidis. But addiction, I was always fascinated to this very day with the drug culture and all of this, because it's a metaphor. It's an exaggerated example that illustrates everybody's entanglement in the material world. it's not just that these, obvious substances are addictive, different drugs, alcohol, and so forth thing. But any pleasure that you have, some intense pleasure, sex addicts, gambling addicts, whatever stimulates that pleasure center in the brain, it can become addictive. That means that it covers your intelligence. You become a slave. You become. Sometimes they want to commit suicide. Prabhupada talks about that, about gamblers. I never heard of this before. In this lecture, he said that in Europe, what is it? There's one whole country where it's legal. The small little country, I forget, Monte Carlo, right? It's famous for having a lot of gambling houses there. So he probably read this somewhere. I never heard of it. That sometimes someone would go there, lose all his money, and commit suicide, and they would throw the body out on the street. Because it was a common thing. Call the police and everything. So they didn't want to be bothered. I mean, it's tragic, really, when you think, somebody getting, so much control by that. You lose your intelligence. It's right there in the Gita, 3rd chapter. Lust, I mean, kama covers, of course, sex desire, but it covers any compulsive desire you have that you can't control. That's why it says attraction, matures, if you will, into lust, right? Dhyayato vishayan pranksa sangas bhajayate. Sangat sanjayate kama. Then you can't stop it, right? It's got control of you. And then anger. Now anger is obviously a very strong emotion, but if you can't express it, you're really angry at yourself. That's another form of depression. If you know what I mean. When you turn it inward, it becomes a deep depression. You can't stand yourself anymore. I can't, and that's where suicide comes in. I just want to end it all. It's too much. So you can see how tragic it is. But that's true for everyone. It doesn't have to be just these extreme examples. Anyone who's just an ordinary materialist has a list of addictions that he has, which they may not be called addictions, but those material desires completely cover your innate knowledge. Avritam jnanametina jnanino nityavaidina. Right there in the 3rd chapter. Avrita means to cover. The jnanina is us. We are the knower. We have innate knowledge. But it becomes covered over by the material energy, the modes of nature. And then, you lose the human form. And it means you go down, and your consciousness is more covered, and you take on these different forms, and very rude. You're helpless there. All you can do is live out your sentence in that particular body and eventually come up to the human form. But in the human form, we have the chance, because of the higher intelligence, of controlling the lower self, not letting ourselves getting entangled in these addictions, and turning our addiction to Krishna. Prabhupada told us like that. He said, who is the this famous conversation with John Lennon and Yoko Ono? So he's living, the history, he's in 1969, they couldn't find a place. You had these 6 couples, so finally they contacted George Harrison, and he contacted John Lennon, and he invited him to come and stay at his estate. It wasn't where the Bhaktivedanta Manor is, that was something else. And so the devotees moved there, and they wrote to Prabhupada, or they called him, I don't know, and they said, well, now you can come and you stay, So he really eagerly wanted to come there. They had been writing him, but there was no place, So, okay, he's staying there, and eventually he had a conversation in the place where Yoko Ono and John Lennon were living. You read this in the book? It's there in, what is it? Chant and be happy. Chant and be happy. So, they were famous addicts. I think they were into heroin. So they have a picture on the wall of them in an intoxicated state. And probably seeing all this, so he understands what's going on. So they're asking him, how do you tell who the real guru is? Where can you find a real guru? He said, that person who is most addicted to Krishna. And it's actually a fact. When you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we have the greatest description Prabhupada gave us of the highest levels of bhakti, What is that? I mean, they go on chanting throughout the night, hearing and chanting, go on chanting, until finally, he's so exhausted that they stopped chanting, and Nityananda took him home, It's an addiction. It was a wholesome addiction. is what we want, because what's the side effects? The side effects of drug addiction, alcohol addiction are horrible. We all know it. It's so self-destructive. You ruin your brain. Who was it who called me up? Vermopathy, when he was here. He calls me up. This was a couple of weeks before he left. He said, "There's a fellow over here named Jamie who says he knows you." Who's that? Can he come over? And I took a chance. I said, yes, There must be someone who met me at the temple. He comes over, knocks on rings the bell, and he's got what looks like a beer can in his hand, I probably shouldn't have let him in. But somehow I vaguely remembered him, so I let him in. He sat down, And it turns out this was the fellow who came years ago and was involved with a devotee's son who was sent out here. It's a whole story. There's a devotee named Adi Karta. I don't know if none of you are really old timers here. He was an old preacher in England, Prabhupada disciple, and he has a actual farmstead out there in Alatra County. He has cows and everything. But he himself's a book distributor, So he has his sons run the farm and everything. Anyway, one of his sons got involved with alcohol, which was not, unfortunately, completely uncommon among some of these youngsters growing up in ISKCON. So he was having trouble with it, and he knew he liked me, and he thought that I would be good for him to get my son. So he sends him out here. And I think he was living in the temple. Maybe not. Anyway, so we had some nice talks and everything, and he found his way to the AA up the street, And he must have invited this other guy to come down here. So this guy, Jamie, comes to the temple. And somehow or other, he was very attracted to my classes. But the poor guy had been a cocaine addict for years in SanDiego. And he'd blown some fuses in there. And he couldn't, he's sitting, just imagine you're sitting in a class, and after 7 minutes, 8 minutes, you can't sit anymore. You have to go up and get outside and read. You're just so agitated. Then you come back after a few minutes, sit down, and you have to go back. And he could not sit for more than 6-7 minutes at a time. Poor guy. Eventually, it's a long story, and he couldn't come back, and we kicked him out. But before then, he actually helped me, and he bought a little futon. He drove me downtown, and someone was selling it, which I still have to this day. So the guy comes in, and he has a problem. He can't find his car. He parked it somewhere. He thought that he drove down with a friend, and he let his friend park it. But that wasn't so. Now he said, no, that's not so. And then he says, I think I'm getting Alzheimer's. And he's not that old. He's maybe 15 years younger than me. And it's a tragic waste, of energy. The guy's intelligent, but the effects of the drug had just messed his brain up. And you have casualties all over this country of young people, older people who have. Everyone knows alcohol is going to wreck your health. But any drug you take which gives you some extreme pleasure, it's affecting your brain chemistry. It's tragic. So Krishna consciousness is a wholesome drug, if you will. In other words, it ends your attachment for everything material, and allows you to actually become detached, vairagya, and vidya, and to experience natural happiness, because it puts you in touch with the reservoir of all pleasure. So it looks just like addiction, and it is in one sense, but it's a wholesome addiction. It doesn't have any bad effects. What's the effect? You end your cycle of birth and death and go back to Godhead. That's not a bad side effect. It's a good side effect. So we're learning some basic facts about it. Adidev Ajam Vibhum. Now, this Vibhum is interesting because the rest of the chapter, most of it, is Arjun. Arjun asked Krishna, can you please explain to me how I can see you in this world? How people can see you in this world? And in the purport, although it doesn't come out exactly, but Prabhupada said at the end, Arjun is asking this question for us. that he himself is satisfied with his realization of Krishna. He's now recognized him as God. But from here on in, he doesn't need to be convinced. He's asking Krishna details where he can expand. And of course, in the 11th chapter, he asks him to show the universal form. And it's very clear in the purport there, this is not for Arjuna. This is so that if there's any charlatan, guru comes along or claiming to be God, right, we've had that, okay, I'm ready to see a universal form. None of these charlatans can claim a universal form. That's Prabhupada says that's the main reason. So, okay, any questions on this verse? We can move on. Very next verse is very important. First line, as I mentioned. Any questions abroad? No. Okay, you can tell me from right there. Sarvametan Vatam Manye Yanmam Badasikeshava Nahite Bhagavan Vyaktim Vidudeva Nadanavaha. O Krishna, I totally accept as truth all that you have told me. Neither the demigods nor the demons, O Lord, can understand your personality. Purport. Arjuna herein confirms that persons of faithless and demonic nature cannot understand Krishna. He is not known even by the demigods, so what to speak of the so-called scholars of this modern world? By the grace of the Supreme Lord, Arjuna has understood that the supreme truth is Krishna and that he is the perfect one. One should therefore follow the path of Arjuna. He received the authority of the Bhagavad Gita, as described in the 4th chapter. The parampara system of disciplic succession for the understanding of the Bhagavad Gita was lost. And therefore, Krishna re-established that disciplic succession with Arjuna because he, Krishna, considered Arjuna his intimate friend and a great devotee. Therefore, as stated in our introduction to the Gita Upanishad, the Bhagavad Gita should be understood in the parampara system. When the parampara system was lost, Arjuna was selected to rejuvenate it. The acceptance by Arjuna of all that Krishna says should be emulated. Then we can understand the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. And then only can we understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one thing I forgot to mention from the previous purport, Prabhupada is emphasizing again here also, that you can't understand God just by your own effort. Prabhupada always quoted the verse 1855, I think it is. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanjastasmi tattvataha. That by bhakti alone can I be understood. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanjastasmi tattvataha, in truth. This word, bhaktya mam abhijanati tato mam tattato gyadva. The word tattva appears twice in that verse. So it's not that you can superficially know Krishna. This was probably what he kept bumping up in India when he was trying. He tried really hard. He had that Jhansi program. I've sometimes thought that lady who took over the thing, the governor's wife or whatever it was, we should really have a little altar for her. If she hadn't done it, probably would have been, very successfully in Jhansi. He never would have come here. But anyway, and his wife, so nice that she was and she sold his Bhagavatam for tea biscuits. That was the last straw. There's so many things arranged for Prabhupada to take sannyas and then finally have no other. If he wanted to try to fulfill his guru's order, because the basic, what I understand from that order is that preach in English. Preach in English, right? So he was preaching in English. He started the BTG in English, and he was doing the English preaching. But really, the implication was, go to the English-speaking countries. At least England. He'd already tried England, right? He sent some disciples in. Anyway, so why couldn't he succeed in India? Because people already thought they knew about Krishna. Yeah, my grandma taught me about Krishna. She told me about that he stole butter and everything. I know about Krishna. No, you have to know in truth. You have to know Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo. In other words, Krishna bicycle shop. It's you find all over India, right? So he came. It was Krishna's arrangement, but it was also a genius, exception. Come to a place where no one knows anything about Krishna, And there's great facility. You know, the old thing of the blind man and the lame man. If you can get American ingenuity and American money and American intelligence involved, you know, in preaching Christian content, it can take off, and that's what happened. But that, you know, period in 65, 66, when he was like, you know, working alone and really not making a headway, that was, you know, showed Prabhupada's, you know, determination. And you can see, you know, I mean, he would go down to that pier, you know, to the office of the Jaladuta, the Scindia, you know, checking on whether he had it. Yeah, you have your, you know, you can get on any boat and go back if you want. We have it, but he never got on that boat. So that was, you know, because otherwise, you know, he saw that as a do or die, basically, you know, better die trying. You know, it was really wonderful history we part of. You can relish. So we should also be able to say to Krishna, Sarvamaitam Vritam Manye, Yang Mang Badasi Keshava. I accept as true everything you say. You know, and it's coming through the Bhagavad Gita. Well, you know, then Krishna says, Manmanabhava Madbhakto. He says, Sarvadharma Parityajya, give up everything and surrender unto me. And we should also accept that. So how is it that you know, all of these Bhagavad Gitas that had been translated and studied in the colleges, they never resulted in any actual devotees, you know, becoming, because they didn't understand Krishna as he was, even though they're reading the same words, because it's not coming through the parampara. That's the point Prabhupada making here. And he harkens back to the 4th chapter, text 2. We should know this verse. Evam parampara praptam imam raja shayo vidahu sakalene hamata yogo nashtak parantapa. I spoke this science of yoga. Now it's interesting, I pointed this out once before, that if you start with, that's the second verse. The first verse is imam vivastate yogam proktavanaham avyam. I spoke this yoga, the science of yoga, to who? Who was it he spoke to? Remember? Sun God, the Vivasvan. And Vivasvan spoke it to his son, the Manu, Vaivasata Manu, who's our Manu, you know. And it came down into human society through Ikshvaku, you know. Okay, so it's coming down. But it says Sakalena Mahata. Kalena Mahata means by the long expanse of time, the science has been lost. This is what happens in the material world. As the yugas go on and the Dwapara Yuga turns into Kali Yuga, you know, everything becomes more influenced by the mode of ignorance and passion. So the science as it is had been lost. And this is at the beginning, before Kali Yuga even started, Krishna speaking. Yoga nashtak para. Now where's that yoga? Krishna, what yoga was he talking about? You remember the end of the 3rd chapter, he's talking about how, you know, lust covers knowledge. This is the eternal enemy of the spirit soul, right? This is your enemy. So you have, what's the solution? He says at the very end, Evam buddhe padam buddha sangstapyatmanamatmana jashi shatram mahabaho kamarupam darasanam. Understanding by your intelligence that you are transcendental to the intelligence as the spirit soul, conquer this enemy, you know, lust by your spirit, by the strengthened intelligence. Well, there's no real process of yoga that he's describing there, but the implication is that in order to strengthen that intelligence and to get the ability to control the lower self, you have to practice some process of yoga. So that's I spoke it already, the sun god, but now it's been lost, and so he's starting another disciplic succession with Arjuna. Now, in our disciplic succession, we don't trace it back through Arjuna, but it's note that the basic principle is there. It starts with Krishna. All of the different sampradayas, they start with Krishna. And then they come down, you know, through Lakshmi and, you know, and Ramanuja and the 4 Kumaras, you know. But where's the knowledge coming from? 4 Kumaras got it from Brahma got it from Krishna. Except we're part of the Brahma Sampradaya, you know. So these Sampradayas all start with Krishna. But each one of them, you know, when Kali Yuga gets very strong, the science as it is becomes lost. So this particular Kali Yuga follows the Dwapara Yuga, in which Krishna himself appeared. And so in that Kali Yuga, once in a day of Brahma, how long is it approximately? 24 hours? 8,640,000,000. That's a long time. Here we are, with our little 72-year-old, longevity, And it's just like inconceivable how fortunate we are. Lord Chaitanya came and gave it, Namo Mahavadanyaya. Vadanyaya means the most munificent. Magnanimous has a little different. Prabhupada would use them synonymously, so we'll take that as a. But you can magnanimous. You certainly very magnanimous. Magnanimous means forgiving. Munificent means giving. You can figure it that way. Giving, in other words, generous. Who could be more generous than to give out the highest goal, the highest valuable thing, which is Krishna? Prema. Not even Krishna, but Krishna Prema. Love for Krishna. To everybody. Just chant this mantra. Chant Hare Krishna. Everything follows from that, if you're ready to do that. So he showed in his tour of South India, people would just see him chanting and they would get prema. It was such a powerful force that they would go back home and they would, by their influence, others would. This is how he spread Krishna consciousness. So, the fact is that unless we have a connection with the parampara, with the pure devotees, we're going to get a distorted understanding of what God is. And we're not going to have that impetus to actually take up the process, which is, let's face it, it's pretty austere compared to what else is going on in this Kali Yuga. Just the four regulative principles are inconceivable for most people. Prabhupada tells that story about his godbrother who went to I think Lord Jetland or somebody, one of the English lords that they preached to, Prabhupada went to the people, the mass of the people, and his godbrothers went to the lords and ladies, and then they came home, But so one of his godbrothers was asked by this lord, "Can you make me into a Brahmin?" Because the English knew about how exalted that was. Make me a Brahmin. Of course, no problem. You just have to follow these four regs. And what was the answer? Impossible. That's my very life. That's what they live for. Meat eating, illicit sex, intoxication. And it's all around us here. May have different varieties, but that's basically what's going on. So, the first step, in the process, if you really take it, it can be a little painful, you have to do that. But if you're sincere, and you chant and pray for the strength to do it, and associate with devotees, and take plenty of pakoras, you can prasadam, then you can do it. You can get a foothold, and you can actually practice, and with time, you realize that it's not impossible. And Prabhupada was always happy to show off. I'm reading this book. I'm almost through it. It's a wonderful book, Giriraj Swami's book about I'll build you a temple. Prabhupada promised. It's an incredible book. But he would love, to show off his Westerners. They were so involved in that thing. But look at them now. They're all pure. So he had tremendous influence there in Bombay. Many people came. So I believe everything you say is true, and this kind of faith. Our whole process, our advancement depends on faith, and you'll find that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a certain way of, and we should understand how to judge where we are in the process. Who is a Uttama Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, and Kanishta Adhikari, and there's a definition in the 11th canto. And the Uttama Adhikari, basically he sees Krishna everywhere in everyone's heart. He sees everyone as a devotee but himself. And therefore why preach? They're already devotees, So it said he has to come down to the Madhyama platform. And this is the main platform we should strive for too. We can also. So he says, Ishare tad edineshu balisheshu dvishatrucha prema maitri kripopeksha yakaroti samadhyama. So it's very important, verse. And he's defining he says, Ishware Tadadineshu. So he's defining four different categories of beings. The Lord, the Supreme Lord Ishvara. Tadadineshu, those who are related to him, the devotees. Balisheshu, the innocent. And the Dvishatsu, the envious. Those are the out-and-out demons, atheists. So the vast mass of people are mostly agnostics. They don't know anything. They can be victimized this way or that way. So they're innocent. They're preachable. So then he gives four different ways of relating Each one. This is very important. How do we relate to people? So for the devotee, for the Lord, the devotee tries to develop love, prema. For the devotees, friendship, maitri. For the innocent, kripa, mercy, by giving them Krishna consciousness. And for the envious, avoidance. You see. So this is one way of understanding. But there's another way, by the level of faith, the depth of faith that you have in Krishna. And the ones with the greatest faith, they're ready to undergo all kinds of difficulties and impossible things, like getting on a cargo boat and coming to America with $7 in your pocket, because they have complete faith in Krishna and the spiritual master and the previous acharyas, the bhakti, And so, where do we fit in? Well, we have to have some faith. Ado shraddha tatak sangha. You have to have enough faith, which is more like interest and respect, to come into the association of devotees and get the benefits of association. Because by that, your association is everything. So by that association, you'll get interested in reading the book, and by reading the book, it's beginning the process, And then as soon as you start chanting, Krishna, his purifying power starts working, and you become interested. And anartha nivritti, and it should mature into initiation, and going on and up like that. So this sarvam etad ritam manye is yanang vadasi keshava. We need to be able to say that also. I accept as truth everything that you say. And most devotees will accept that. We're not like arguing with different points of philosophy here, But to bring that to the point of acting on it fully, as Krishna says, that's another advancement. But accepting the truth of it, that's a very nice place to be. Anyway, we're running out of time. Any questions or comments? We got a microphone. I think we have a questioner. Haribol, Ravi.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the nice class. I only had one comment. So when you were talking about the addiction, I could see in India, like all my relatives and most of the Indians, you could say, they would portray ISKCON devotees as somebody who's like, they're always trying to say Krishna, Krishna. They're always addicted in some ways.
What's wrong with them?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's there's a verse in the Gita in the beginning, I think, in the second chapter. Those who are self-realized, what's day for them is night for the karmis, and vice versa. So they see it as something harmful. But we had that whole era in America of deprogramming, where the parents especially would freak out. Their sons, I had such plans for him, and now he's got off with those crazy Hare Krishnas. And so they were paying kidnappers to kidnap them and try to brainwash them and break their faith. It was a terrible era. But then I was reading. This is in the book of Guru Swami. It's a famous episode where there was a big court case in New York, and the judge eventually made the statement, "No, Krishna consciousness is a bona fide religion." It was in the newspapers like that, and Prabhupada saw it and said, "Oh, now my movement is successful. Now my efforts are successful." And after that, especially when they prosecuted one set of kidnappers for kidnapping, that was it, because they were just doing it for the money, So they stopped, and you know where it started? Right here, SanDiego. Yeah, the head of the whole deprogramming started right here in SanDiego, back in the 70s. One more?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Okay, is it Dhanavari?
Yes, Prabhu. I just remember, next class, I just remember that verse, second chapter, Yani sa sarva bhutanam, tasyam jagrati sanyamim, yasyam jagrati bhutanim, sa nisha pashyato mune dhavan.
Yeah, that's the verse. Thanks for reminding me, yeah.
Thank you. I like that verse.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I remember when I would walk, because it's a party town, right? So I come to, but with the COVID, everything's under a little bit thing. But you come to Mangalartik on, Saturday morning, and the Friday night parties are still going on, And then by the time I come back at 8 o'clock, 8:30, they're all sleeping already, and we're ready to go. So it's like you can see it, enacted in real life, Okay, all glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.